Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into a huge topic, one that really sits at the heart of faith for millions of people, the true nature of God.
It's a big one. And most people, you included, probably feel like you have a pretty good handle on it.
Right, but the sources we've looked at suggest that, well, a lot of common beliefs about God are based on incomplete information, or even, straight up misinterpretations.
Exactly. So our mission in this deep dive is to lay out the core theological argument that Jesus Christ is the ultimate and perfect revelation of God the Father.
The definitive one.
The definitive one. If you want to know what God is really like, according to these teachings, you have to look at Jesus. And only Jesus.
And the framework for this isn't just a casual read-through. The sources really hammer this idea of rightly dividing the word of truth, which is a direct reference to 2 Timothy.
It is. It implies there's a right way and a wrong way to interpret Scripture, especially when you're trying to square the Old Testament with the New.
Okay, so let's start with that fundamental conflict, because I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes from.
It is. The sources point out that so much religious teaching gets tangled up because it takes the wrath and the judgment you see in the Old Testament, and presents that as God's definitive character for today.
And that's a really profound point. The scriptural contrast the material lays out is, frankly, startling. You can search the entire Bible, and you will find no verse that says, as a flat-out definition, God is wrath.
You won't. You'll see it described as an action, a response to things, but never as his core being.
But then you flip to the New Testament, to 1 John, and it just says it plainly.
It says, God is love. It's a statement of being. So the teaching asks this really critical question. If the whole Bible is God-breathed, as it says in 2 Timothy, how do we weigh those two things?
A manifestation of wrath versus a definitive statement of nature.
Precisely. If he is love, how does that not redefine everything that came before it?
That brings up a huge question about our own biases, doesn't it? Are we letting our own ideas of, say, fairness or punishment define God for us?
And that's exactly where the source material introduces this powerful idea it calls digital idolatry.
Okay, that sounds modern. It's not about a golden calf.
No, not at all. It's about creating a God in your own image, a God that fits your preferences, your politics, your personal sense of justice.
So an example would be something like, well, my God wouldn't punish people that way.
That's a perfect example.
Or
on the flip side, my God must punish those people because they deserve it. It's whenever we make our personal standard the measure for the divine.
I see. So the argument is that the true standard has to be the revelation God has already given, whether we like it or not. We have to accept what's revealed.
Exactly. And to do that, you have to start with a realistic view of the human condition. The teaching really challenges this modern idea that people are basically good.
Which is a very popular idea.
It is. But the scriptural view, according to this analysis, is the total opposite. That without Christ, our nature is fundamentally broken. And if you don't get the depth of that problem, you can't appreciate the character of the God who provides the solution.
That sets the stage perfectly for the New Testament, because the solution was, well, it was radical.
It had to be. We turn to Hebrews chapter 1, and it marks this huge pivot point. It says, God spoke in the past through prophets, but
in these last days has spoken unto us by his Son. This isn't just a new messenger.
No, it's a totally different quality of revelation. The key concept here is completeness. The Old Testament wasn't wrong, but it was incomplete. It was the shadow.
And Jesus is the substance.
Jesus is the substance, the full, unedited, complete picture of who God is. Anything said or done before was just a piece of the story. He is the whole story.
But hold on, if we say the Old Testament was incomplete, does that mean we just throw out the idea of justice or God's standards?
That's a great question. The source frames it as a shift. The Old Covenant revealed God's righteous standards. The Son reveals God's heart and his ultimate intent. Justice isn't thrown out. It's fulfilled at the cross.
So that fulfillment allows God's true nature, which is love and mercy, to be perfectly displayed.
Without compromising righteousness. Exactly. And that makes the description of Jesus in Hebrews 1 verse 3 the absolute anchor of this entire argument.
He's called the express image of his person. We can't just skim over that.
We can't, because the Greek word used there is character.
Which sounds just like our word, character.
It does. But the original meaning is so specific. It meant the impression left by a seal, like a signet ring pushed into wax. It's not similar, it's an exact copy.
Wow. Okay, so not just a good representative. He's the Father made visible, a perfect impression.
The perfect impression. That's why Jesus could say things like, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father.
Yeah.
He wasn't just being poetic. He was claiming an identity of nature.
And that extends to what he did too. There's that verse in John, the Son can do nothing of himself.
But what he sees the Father do, and the teaching clarifies, this isn't proof that Jesus is somehow lesser. It's proof of their complete and total oneness.
They're in perfect sync.
Perfect sync. So if you see Jesus doing something, you are seeing the Father's absolute perfect will in action. And that right there is the critical test.
Okay, so that oneness is the key, because it answers the question that causes so much pain and confusion for people. What is God's will about sickness, about suffering?
Right. If Jesus is the exact copy of God's character, then we have to look at what his life demonstrated.
And this is where the source material gets very challenging to a lot of traditional religion.
It does, because you have to ask the hard questions. Yeah. Looking at Jesus' ministry, did he ever, not once, put sickness on a person?
And the answer from the Gospels, according to this analysis, is a clear and resounding no, not one single instance.
That just shatters the idea that God uses sickness to teach you a lesson. What about the other side? Did he ever refuse to heal someone? Did he ever say, sorry, you haven't learned your lesson yet?
Again, no. The sources say he never refused. But what about that time in his hometown, Nazareth, where it says he could do no mighty work? People point to that.
And that's addressed head on. The clarification is so important. It wasn't that he wouldn't heal them. It was that he couldn't because of their unbelief.
So it wasn't God withholding.
Not at all. It was humanity refusing to receive what he was freely offering. His power was present, but their unbelief was a barrier to them receiving it.
So if Jesus, the perfect express image of the Father, never caused sickness and never withheld healing,
then the whole religious idea that God gave you this trial to break you or make you a better person, it just can't be true within this framework.
If it were true, then Jesus failed to accurately represent the Father.
Exactly. His entire mission was the opposite. And the sources point to Acts 10:38 to show us the true source of the problem.
Jesus went about doing good and healing all that were oppressed of the devil.
See, it puts the blame where it belongs. The oppression comes from the devil, who John 10 says comes to steal, kill, and destroy. God's nature, seen in Jesus, is all about life, goodness, and freedom.
It brings us right back to the beginning, the core nature. God is love. And that love isn't just for some far-off eternal salvation.
No, that love is for now. It's for tangible blessing and life. The source uses this funny little phrase, it's not just pie in the sky by and by, but it's steak on the plate while you wait.
I like that. It's about a present tense reality.
A present reality that flows out of maybe the most radical idea of all, which we find in 2 Corinthians 5.
God was in Christ reconciling the world unto himself, not imputing their trespasses unto them.
We have to slow down on that one.
Yeah.
Because the practical reality for most believers is that they live under a performance system. They think God is mad at them every time they mess up.
Right. They think they need to reconfess and get right with God before he'll even listen to their prayers. It's a constant cycle of anxiety.
It is. But the source's claim is that all sin, past, present, and yes, future, has already been dealt with at the cross.
Future, too.
Think about it. When Christ died 2,000 years ago, every sin you would ever commit was still in the future. If his sacrifice wasn't enough for those, then it wasn't a perfect sacrifice at all.
That is a staggering thought. It just lifts the entire burden of trying to earn God's approval.
It means condemnation is off the table for the believer. It's finished. But that always brings up the next big question.
If God isn't holding my sins against me, does that mean I can just go live however I want, a free pass to be destructive?
And the sources are very clear on this. There's a huge difference between God's judgment and natural consequences.
Okay, break that down.
God is not imputing your sin meaning. He's not holding it against you for your eternal standing with him. But living in sin is still, in the source's words, stupid.
Because it opens the door for the enemy.
It gives the devil an entrance. God still loves you. But sin itself has destructive consequences because it allows the one who wants to steal, kill, and destroy access to your life.
So the real power isn't in trying to be perfect. It's in knowing the true, revealed, loving character of God that we see in Jesus.
That's the key. Knowing who he is lets you understand who you are. And you see it work out in the stories shared in the sources.
Like the story of Johann, the former drug dealer.
Exactly. He's in prison, expecting to be crushed by shame, but instead he has this encounter with God's unconditional love. and it completely transforms him from the inside out.
And then there's that incredible story about the man with yellow fever.
Yes. The doctors gave him a death sentence. They said, you're going to turn yellow, your organs will fail, you're going to die.
But his response wasn't, oh, I guess this is God's will.
Not at all. Because he was rooted in this revelation of God's goodness, he just said, yellow is not my color, and I'm not going to die because I'm going to live.
Sealed the next day.
Completely healed. These stories are the proof. They show what happens when someone aligns their belief with the complete revelation of God in Jesus, not with, religious fear or misunderstanding.
Which brings us to our final thought for you to take away. If Jesus is the exact copy of the Father, that perfect impression, and his entire ministry was about relentless healing and liberation, what outdated ideas might you need to let go of?
What traditional belief about God's character might you need to drop to fully accept this revelation of his absolute goodness and his intention for your life right now, today?
It's a challenging thought, but as the sources argue, accepting it is the key to everything.
It really is.
An incredibly powerful framework. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive. We'll catch you next time.